Well, welcome. Some familiar faces out here, and I know some of you have participated in our past workshops. This is so important for us to work with you on our integrated resource plan, because this really sets the investments of how we're going to transform our power system. We really started this engagement back in 2010 through multiple integrated resource plans, and every time we try to tune up based on the current technologies and the current real drivers of what our customers want and our expectations of our future. So this is a really important plan. And so I really appreciate the fact that you came out tonight. We want to have an active engagement in the plans we set forth, and we've been working on it for some time, and we do not have any particular recommendations tonight. What we have is really the plan details, and it's really up to you to kind of drive what that recommendation might look like. We've been working with stakeholders for the last few months in a stakeholder type meeting with the environmental community. We had neighborhood councils, we had customers, we had policymakers, including the mayor's office and council offices. And they've helped come up with the scenarios that you're going to see. But that's what it was about, is coming up with scenarios for you to consider and provide feedback on what is the best scenario for us to move forward on. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce James Barner. He's kind of the mastermind behind really putting together our integrated resource plan. He has a presentation here tonight. And then I know that afterwards, we're going to really entertain a lot of dialogue on what you've heard. Okay, so with that.
Apologize. It's me again. Apologize. My name is Louis Ting. I'm the Director of Power Planning Development, and thank you all again for coming. Before I give the mic to the mastermind here, so if I can just have some ground rules, we would like to keep this meeting as streamlined, as smooth as possible. So if you would just write down your questions, and we'll get to them on the second hour after James is done. And then if there's any further discussion topics needed, we'll go through it after the question and answer period. Okay, we can have some lively discussions here if you. And for those of you who are online looking at this and listening to this, we are jotting down the questions on the WebEx, so that we'll go ahead and get those questions jotted down and put them in order, and we'll answer them as quickly as we can throughout the process. And during the presentation, Mr. Simon Zudu here, our manager for looking at 100% clean energy future for us, and he's going to come up and give a brief discussion on what we're doing, our efforts, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I know it's tough to get away from home and the family and so forth, and come out here, especially on a World Series night, from what I understand. So thank you for coming. I'm going to talk about, give you an overview of the power system. We have here a roadmap, and the reason why we chose this illustration is that really the IRP is a roadmap. It's to guide us in a particular direction, and not to be like a GPS where we have absolute certainty exactly where we're going to go, but we points us in the right direction so that all of our budget and priorities can be aligned within our organization to support our power plan, overall power objectives. So I'm going to talk about the power transformation. As you know, California is one of the states on the forefront of implementing clean energy technology. We're the third largest utility in California, and we're going through a tremendous transformation in our system, replacing what's been in place for about 100 years. Old gas-fired units. We've just completed 2 major repowerings, and we've also implemented a lot of renewable projects, a lot of wind projects, but more recently in this last year, which is kind of exciting, we've implemented about 315 megawatts of solar facilities in our desert region just outside of Tehachapi in Kern County. Those total about 2 million panels that were installed. So those types of things are going on in the department. It's a very exciting time in the last 5 years. I'm going to talk about the case scenarios. We had 2 cold cases that we had carried over from previous years. We've continued to analyze that to look at the costs associated with replacing coal. And then I'm going to talk about some renewable and energy efficiency cases. And then we're going to look at case comparisons, looking at GHG emissions, costs, rate impact, and so forth. And then we'd most importantly like to get your feedback here on our plans and our goals. First of all, our power plant objectives. This is what drives all of our planning process. First, to ensure high reliability, which is keeping the electricity running 24/7. That's the most important objective. We do that primarily through our power system reliability program, where we replace old assets of the system, transformers and so forth, power poles and so forth. We also looking at more flexible generation. So as we do the repowering projects, we're installing very flexible generators that can then respond to renewable output more quickly and keep our load and our generation supply and demand in sync. And then integrating renewables is important to keep that in sync, to keep our electricity stable. Environmental policies to try to meet or exceed the state mandates and various regulations. One of those being reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Replacing coal power is one of the major ways that we do that. And then eliminating ocean water cooling, once through cooling they call it. And that's something that we're doing as part of our repowering process, is not using ocean water for cooling our generating units. So we're using dry cooling. We're also, competitive rates is very important to us, maximizing our existing infrastructure as much as possible so we don't have to go build new transmission, or basically using it to the most efficient way possible. And cost-effective business approaches in general in how we deliver power to our customers. The IRP is a long-range plan. It's a 20-year plan looking out to 2036. We're going to talk about 2016 to 2036. It's a plan to meet LA's future energy needs, addresses the regulatory requirements, environmental goals and policies, and demand forecast is included, and our financial, and talks about our financial needs. So then these financial goals are then hopefully realized in a rate case to help pay for these programs. It's a living document. We update it every year, and we ask for public review and feedback, which this is our public outreach meeting here, and we do that every 2 years. And Mike talked a little bit about the IRP Advisory Committee, and that was a very successful process, I believe, in the last 3 months. We just completed that. And that purpose of that advisory committee is to come up with these cases that we then analyze here, and we're going to be showing you the results. Here's our power system. We have extensive transmission going up to the Washington border with Oregon. We have a number of wind projects up in that area. We have out in Utah, we have the Intermountain Generating Station, which is our large coal-fired plant. And then we have 2 wind projects there in Utah and 1 in Wyoming. There's 3 projects total. They come down that STS, we call it, Southern Transmission System line to Los Angeles. We also have Hoover Dam, Palo Verde Generating Station, which is a nuclear facility out in Arizona. We have geothermal in the southern part of California. We have solar mostly concentrated around the Pine Tree project here, located over here. That's in the Mojave area near Edwards Air Force Base. Beacon Solar is there as well. Then we have our traditional aqueduct plants along our aqueduct that generate electricity, and those have been there for decades. And then we have local facilities here. So we have Power Plant 1, which is one of our older hydro plants, part of the aqueduct. Castaic Power Plant is our pumped hydro facility. That supplies a lot of our reserves for our system. We have Valley Generating Station. We have 4 plants. We have Valley Generating Station, Scattergood, Harbor, and Haines. And the 3 facilities along the coast are the ones that are getting repowered currently. Valley was repowered back in around the year 2000. And then, of course, we have our local solar programs, FIT, Feed-in Tariff, net metered solar, and community solar as well. So the major elements to our clean energy transformation is, one is eliminating coal from LADWP's power supply. We've just eliminated Navajo Generating Station. That facility was sold. Not sure what happened here. Somebody's playing with me today. Okay. Sorry about that. So our next goal is reaching 33% renewables by 2020, 50% by 2030, achieving 15% energy efficiency by 2020, once through cooling repowering, which we just talked about, and investing in our power system reliability program, replacing the existing assets as they overage in our system, and then supporting electric vehicle expansion. Coal replacement. So Senate Bill 1368 was passed. It required us to stop importing coal when their contracts expired. We sold our share of Navajo this past July. That reduced our emissions by 1.7 million metric tons a year, which is a very considerable amount of greenhouse gas reduction. We also have the Intermountain Power Project, which we're planning to exit 2 years earlier than the contract date. transformation of our energy resources. So our mix is going from 37% coal today to 0% coal by 2025. It's not shown on here, but 2036 is a later date. We have renewables currently at 21%. We're required to hit 25% by the end of this year. We have new natural gas facilities comprising 25%, hydro 3%, and nuclear 10%. As we go into the future, we will be going to 50% RPS, and our natural gas will be a little bit higher because we're replacing the coal that we will be repowering. The other case that we're looking at here tonight is 65% RPS. And you should note here that the natural gas as a percentage of our power supply will actually be less than today, if that were the case. Increasing renewable energy and energy efficiency. These are our near-term goals out to 2020 to reach 33% renewable RPS. 15% energy efficiency is our target for 2020. One of the benefits of energy efficiency is as you reduce customer sales, you do save on the amount of renewables that you have to build, and that's a pretty significant amount. That's about 1,100 gigawatt hours that you save by implementing 15% energy efficiency. These are our repowering projects. So Haynes units 5 and 6 were replaced in 2013. We completed that. Those were 6 100 megawatt combustion turbines that we put into place that are extremely flexible units. They're some of the most flexible gas-fired units out there. So it means we can shut them off in the middle of the day when the sun is shining really strongly and we have lots of energy, and we can start them up in the late afternoon. So those would be very important units. At Scattergood 3, we replaced a unit there, Scattergood 3, with two more of those LMS 100s, 100 megawatt units. We also have a very efficient 1+1 combined cycle unit that just got put into service at the end of last year. And we're now in the demolition phase for Scattergood units 1 and 2. So we're demoing Scattergood unit 3 to make room for the new units. It's a very tight schedule, and we're required by the South Coast Water Resources Board to have these projects completed by certain target compliance dates, one of those being 2023 and the final date being 2029. Here's a reduction in our ocean water cooling. So in 2013, we reduced from about 1,500 million gallons per day to 1,100 million gallons per day. Today, we're at where the red line is shown here, and we're at about 700 million gallons per day. So our reduction is pretty considerable there, and eventually we'll be down to zero ocean water cooling in 2029 as these units are repowered. Investing in our power system reliability program. So these are our different major subsystems of our electric grid: generation, transmission, substations, which the transmission delivers it over long distance to our substations. That then goes into our distribution system and goes out to our customers' sites. And we have a program now in place, fortunately with the new rate action that was passed and approved. It was a 5-year rate action. Now we have a very consistent multi-year funding for 5 years to fund these replacements of these units. Sure.
There we go. All right.
No, I think
Over here.
they can continue.
Over here, let me see.
Everyone online, please hold on. We apologize for the technical difficulties here. We're trying to get the presentation back online to you.
We're good now.
So the rate case has now allowed us to have consistent multi-year funding to replace these overage components of our power system here, generation, transmission, substations, and distribution system. And below here in the table shown are some of the major components that are part of that program. We prioritize the capital expenditures of these based on need and severity. We've identified the worst performing circuits in our distribution system to try to get the most benefit for our money spent. Part of the rate case was to implement metrics, so we have now performance measurements on our progress as a company of replacing these assets, and so we now have to report those results in order to get continued funding. Power System Reliability Program was initiated in 2006. At that time, we were experiencing a lot of outages in our system. We then got very aggressive with replacing a lot of pole top transformers and other assets in our system, cross arms on poles or pole replacements, and we got it down to we felt were pretty decent numbers here. The 33% reduction in outages. More recently, we've had a little bit of an uptick in the number of outages. We did have a fire at one of our receiving stations. We had a windstorm in 2014. We had a number of circuit breaker failures and trees and animal interference that caused a lot of these outages. In 2015, we had a major windstorm that occurred in January and a heat wave that occurred in September, impacted a lot of our customers. Overall, we still our frequency of our outages and the duration of our outages is still less than our competitors, the other IOUs, Southern California Edison, PG&E. So we're still doing a pretty good job, but we still need to get better at it. The pole replacement life, our 27% of our poles are over 60 years old. So we'll be increasing the number of poles replaced to 5,000 per year to try to get this average age down to reasonable levels of 60 years. And then cable replacement, increasing that from 32 miles per year to 50 miles per year. That's just an example of the type of asset replacement programs we have going. And while we're doing all of this transformation, we're investing huge amounts of money into these programs. We still remain the lowest cost provider of electricity in California. As you can see here, we're lower than any of the other utilities, nearby small publicly owned utilities or the investor-owned utilities. So we want to stay that way. We want to have very affordable rates and continue to make progress. So now I'm going to bring up Simon Zudu. Most recently, the City Council has voted and approved a motion to study 100% renewable and how we get there, what investments we need to make, and developing research partnerships to get us to 100% renewable. And Simon Zudu is in charge of that program.
Thank you, James, and thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Simon Zodu. I'm the manager for Strategic Initiatives Office and Power System. Welcome again. I would like to take a few minutes and discuss our 100% clean energy vision. On September 16th, the City Council passed a motion directing the Department of Water and Power to seriously look into a 100% renewable portfolio. Basically, the direction is for us to engage in research partnerships with local universities, other research institutions, Department of Energy, and other stakeholders to determine how can we achieve 100% and what investments are required to do so. Mission innovation is one of the areas that we were directed to tap into. On last year's Climate Change Summit in Paris, the 20 largest industries decided to set aside funding for a clean energy future in their own respective countries. The United States, under the Department of Energy, put together Mission Innovation. It's a funding, a research and development module so that some research can be done. We expect to tap into that and get some funding to support the 100% clean energy vision for LADWP. Along with that is a Breakthrough Energy Coalition. This is a set of 8 major companies led by Bill Gates that came on board to support the clean energy effort. But once the government and utilities have done the research, the idea is the private industry will take it and scale it to a level where the prices can be palatable to utilities and users alike. So our plan is to make sure that we're going to tap to every research that we can get involved in. We're going to be methodical in the way we select our research partners. We're going to be very transparent. And would like to achieve some results where we can share with our stakeholders in the City Council and the public on what our findings are. Okay, as part of this, as we start this process, these are the 2 primary preliminary ways of achieving 100% clean energy that we've already thought about, and these are 2 scenarios. We're going to come up with sub-scenarios for these or even develop other additional scenarios as we move forward. The first scenario we'll look at is 100% fossil-free scenario. This would determine any type of generation resource other than coal, oil, or natural gas. This might force us over the long run to retire some of our natural gas stations here in the in-basin and out of state as well. Obviously, 100% clean fossil-free scenario will be a mix of solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, anything that would not, any source that would not emit any greenhouse gas into the atmosphere will be part of the consideration here. Sir? I'll get to that. Yeah. And if you can keep all your questions towards the end, we'll make sure that we'll answer all of those. The action that was provided to us by City Council did not put a deadline to the 100% clean energy portfolio study. However, our intent is to finish the study within a reasonable period of time and get to the answers as soon as possible. The reason being we are trying to consider many factors that will be impacted as a result of this overhaul of the entire grid within DWP's grid and come up with the number, what investments are required. So it will take time, and I will go through some of the key considerations that we're going to look at. Part of the 100% fossil-free will include electric vehicles. Electric transportation, electrification is going to be part of it. We're not going to look at only the supply side of the equation, but we're going to look at the demand side as well. So that will be part of the consideration. Second scenario is 100% greenhouse gas neutral scenario. In this scenario, we're trying to get a net zero effect of greenhouse gas. This may include preservation of some of our fossil-free generating, greenhouse gas generating or emitting stations, and offset by doing an over-generation on the renewable side, or we can go on the market and get greenhouse gas credits to offset the greenhouse gas that we're emitting. But we're going to look at each scenario and sub-scenario and to come up with how to move forward. The more options we have, the better, so that we can make the right decision. This is just a picture of a snapshot of today's LADWP generation portfolio. LADWP does have a diverse portfolio of generation resources, as you can see. The ones that are shown in red are the ones that are emitting greenhouse gas, fossil-based generation, that's coal and natural gas. Out of the 9,000 megawatts of generation capacity that we have, about 53% is based on fossil fuels. So anything that would replace that 53% is going to be a formidable task for the department, and we have to take a lot of factors into consideration. So what are these key considerations? First thing that we'll look at is the reliability of the system. We know on conventional renewable resources, there is intermittency, there's a lot of volatility in the power system. What does that mean to the reliability of the Los Angeles grid? So we have to offset that with maybe an energy storage, but we need to look at what the impact is going to be on system stability. That by itself will need a lot of scenarios. We need to do a lot of modeling down the road, but that's one of the areas that we're going to take very seriously. We have to identify where all these end generation renewable resources are going to be. Most of them might be out of state, they might be local, they might be within California, but we have to identify, and we're looking at basically replacing about 53% of our generation capacity right now with renewables. And we need to identify the generation resources. Other utilities within California are looking at the same resources as well. So we have to do a study to see how we're going to bring a generation, renewable power into the LA and Basin area. This may require building of new transmission lines. It may indeed require upgrading of our existing transmission facilities. So transmission is going to be key and a very important area that we look at. One of the most important areas that we have to look at is energy storage. Energy storage would give us that reserve margin that we would need, and it will help us to mitigate the volatility of the renewable sources. Technology is getting better, but at the grid level, we have to research what type of energy storage is available to be able to support the renewable capacity that we're trying to inject into the system. And how are we going to integrate all this into the existing system? How do we control it? Energy storage at the grid level is a new phenomenon within the utility industry. So we need to identify at the very high scale how we're going to integrate it into the system. So system integration is going to be important. As we build the bulk power level, which is a high voltage level, what is the impact on the sub-transmission level and the distribution level? We may need to upgrade some of our receiving stations, distributing stations, some of the sub-transmission lines that we have throughout the city. We need to take a look at that. So the rebuilding of the in-basin distribution system will be considered as part of the 100% clean energy effort. As I mentioned earlier, we'll clearly expand our energy efficiency and demand response efforts. That is to really, ramp up our demand side, efforts to make sure that the 100% clean energy will be a successful effort. And we've already started doing a lot of work in the energy efficiency area. We're expanding our demand response, and we want to couple it and, we want this effort to be complementary to what we're doing on the supply side. So research and development is important. We're going to take a look at more feasibility studies. What are the risks? Reliability is going to be very important, and as I mentioned, integration. So what are we doing now? Power System has put together what we call a vision team. This is an in-house subject matter experts to start looking at all those key considerations, all areas that are important for this effort. And coupled with that, we're going to bring in consultants and industry experts on board to validate our assumptions, to do some studies in parallel, to see what type of research is being done outside, and try to learn from other experiences for other utilities, and even outside the U.S. as well, on some other countries that have tried to move into 100% renewable arena. And research partnership is the third area that we're looking at, which is we're going to put together a committee to see, or I would say, a strategy on how we could pick our research partners. We're going to develop that, outreach strategy. We're going to be very transparent and make sure that we bring in, the right partners so that we can get our solutions within in a timely manner. Stakeholder engagement is going to be very important. Our goal is to create what we call a clean energy committee. Within the committee, we're going to have two working groups, one on policy matters, another one on technical matters, and each working team will be making presentation to the others, and we'll try to be as inclusive as possible, bring in as diverse stakeholders into the process, and that would be part of the recommendations. That would be part of the where we actually present the results of our in-house research, what we're doing with our consultants and our research partners. So once we roll it out, we plan to have a very robust and very transparent process so that all stakeholders are, included in that. Just to close, I just want to point out that there's a lot of innovation going on in the energy storage on some of the new technology. We want to make sure that we take advantage of that. And at the same time, we have to be very open-minded. We're open to comments or any type of technology that's out there. We'll work with the industry to achieve our goal. We need your support, and it's going to be a collaborative process. That's how I envision it. And we'll make sure that all of you in this room are welcome in the coming months, and as we move forward to participate in this effort. This is your utility, and we'll move forward in such fashion. Thank you so much.
Okay, so like I said earlier, the IRP is more of an engineering document. So we're looking at 20 years, a 20-year time frame, and that's also consistent with the state requirements that we evaluate 20 years, and that needs to be submitted to the CEC. So the results from the study will hopefully then inform the IRP process going forward. And start to determine what those investments that are necessary in terms of energy storage or new technologies that we can then incorporate into our programs and in the IRP. So the Integrated Resource Plan has to balance a lot of the goals, which are maintaining high reliability, down here in purple, meeting environmental requirements like removing ocean cooling at coastal plants and reducing carbon emissions. And the programs that we have in place, just some of the programs, are 33%, or the Renewables program going to 50% by 2030. energy efficiency and demand response over here, and eliminating coal. These are three of the major programs here, and these are all interrelated programs. In the case of, let's say, renewables, has an effect on our reliability, so we need to have more flexible generation to respond to the variations of solar output and wind output. So that's a factor there. It does reduce carbon emissions, and then there is a rate impact, so there is additional cost generally associated with renewables, but the prices have been coming down quite a bit, so it's not quite as much of an impact as it used to be. We looked at 6 different cases, including renewable cases on top of 2 coal cases that we continue to evaluate. We've for this purposes of this presentation, to simplify matters, we cut it down to 4 renewable cases. Originally, in the advisory committee, we presented all of the cases to them. And we determined after that point that a couple of the cases, which were basically variations of a 50% case, having high local solar and high energy storage, we decided to remove those cases. So just to simplify the diagrams here, so you can more fully digest them. Otherwise, it starts to look like a bunch of spaghetti. So it's very difficult to see what's doing what. We also had a 33% case, which is where we were at probably 3 years ago and before, just as a comparison, and we removed that as well. We did keep a base case, which is case 4, and that's with lower levels of electric vehicle adoption in our system, electrification as well, that's included in that category. So we have low energy storage. The differences between these 2 cases is low EV, high EV here, both 50% RPS, both low local solar, and low levels of energy storage. This is to meet AB 2514 goal. We established energy storage target of 178 megawatts. So that's our low storage level. The higher storage level here in case 8 LLS, we call it, 8 LLS, meaning low local solar. And then 8, which has high local solar. And this is consistent with the City of LA's sustainability plan, which called for up to 1,500 megawatts by 2025 and 1,800 megawatts by 2035. So that's part of this case 8 here. When we show these results here, we realized that if we really should have had a case that had a lower level of local solar to show what the difference was in cost and emissions impact and so forth. So we added this 8 LLS case here, and we're going to show that to you. We also had a case 8, which was a more 8SF, which was a solar focus case, which we removed, and that was looking at really high levels of utility scale solar out in the desert regions. That was about 5,000 megawatts of solar compared to about 3,500 megawatts in these cases. We decided to take out that case because and we'll show you some of the results of it, but you'll see why we didn't see any GHG benefit from it, and there was a lot of additional costs associated with it and a lot of reliability issues as well. So to simplify things, we want you to evaluate these 4 renewable cases. So the comparison of case 5, case 8, so this is 50% going to 65% RPS, which is the big major difference between these 2 cases. Both Case 5 and Case 8 have a very diverse mix of renewable resources, which has been found to be very favorable in terms of overgeneration, production, and cost and so forth. So here's in 2016, both of these cases have 25% RPS. Here's a mix of breakdown of generic purchases of RECs that we would buy, or we could buy energy from the output of facilities. But these would be typically short-term purchases. We have geothermal, biogas, solar, wind, and small hydro here shown in these diagrams. The distinguishing feature between Case 5 and Case 8 is we start to ramp up in 2020 from 38% to 39%, and then we're on a pathway to hit 55% RPS by 2030. So that would, in Case 8, we'd be exceeding the SB 350 requirements of 50% RPS by 2030. So that's to slowly ramp that up to 55%, and then eventually reach 65% by 2036. And this case was the idea behind the 65% RPS case that came out of the advisory committee process was to create a pathway towards that 100% renewable. So recognizing that we would have to be increasing renewables to reach 100% RPS, we decided to evaluate the results of this case so we could see what the cost impact, emissions impact, and so forth would be for a higher level of RPS. So you can think of the Case 5 as the recommended case from last year. It's also consistent with state law. In some respects, it exceeds it. In terms of energy efficiency, we exceed 10%. We go to 15%. We also have energy storage in there. A lot of the POUs don't have targets for energy storage at this point. We decided to make commitments for energy storage. So that's the differences between the two cases. The local solar comparison, the low versus high. So Case 8 has an overall solar target of 3,500 megawatts by 2036. And it's made up of both local solar and large-scale projects, PPAs. I talked about the 315 megawatts that we just recently installed with the 2 million PV panels. That's that type of project. We have in the lower local solar case, we have 800 megawatts by 2025 and 1,200 megawatts by 2035. So this is our current plan that we had from last year, our recommended growth rate of local solar. This is made up of net metered solar, going to about 465 megawatts of net metered solar. We're currently at 179 megawatts, which was about, I think, 24,000 systems installed in our territory. And our short-term goal next year is to get to 280 megawatts, and eventually by 2020 getting to 465 megawatts of net metered solar. Then we have a community solar program, which is geared towards multifamily dwellings, people that in apartments and so forth, or for whatever reason can't install solar, and they want to be able to participate. Then they can participate in this program and get a credit on their, and basically get that set on their bill and at a fixed rate and going forward. And so we're still developing that program. It's still under development. There's a lot of complicated issues with that, but that program is going forward. It's about 40 megawatts. And the balance is our feed-in tariff program, which is about 300 megawatts at the 800 level, and another 400 megawatts beyond that to get to the 1,200 level by 2035. The high local solar is the 1,500 megawatts, consistent with the City of LA's sustainability plan, reaching by 2025 1,500 megawatts, and then going to 1,800 megawatts by 2036. And one of the things that we've done since is we looked at different combinations of net metered solar versus feed-in tariff to see what the cost impact of one versus the other. And at this point, we don't have anything locked in stone going forward. We do have reliability concerns on our distribution system, but we think, with upgrades and so forth, that won't be as much of an issue, but it'll take a little bit of time to introduce more net metered solar. But that could be some sort of a mix between net metered solar and feed-in tariff. So our energy storage here, this is our assumptions that we put into our modeling. We have 178 megawatts here in the low energy storage, which is made up of a number of different components. We have Castaic improvements, so this was improvements to enhance the efficiency of our Castaic pumped hydro units by over 20 megawatts. And then we also had an LAX thermal energy storage, which basically creates chilled water for use at night. Right now, I think it probably creates chilled water at night and then uses it during the day. But that's one of our energy storage projects that was completed. Then we have two projects, Beacon batteries, 20 and 30 megawatts. This will probably be a combined project, about 50 megawatts near our Beacon solar facility. Then we have a Valley Thermal, which is basically a thermal energy storage that's used to enhance the capacity output of our Valley generating station. And then we have customer distributed thermal, so this might be in the form of ice bears at our residential customers, homes, or small businesses, or it could be larger thermal installations for larger customers. And then we have 4 megawatts of distributed batteries, which would be batteries on the customer side, probably together with solar systems, small battery installations, so they could service storing their solar power during the day and then releasing it at night when they come home from work. And then also, so that would be that program. Then for the high case, we added additional energy storage. One was a compressed air energy storage, which we modeled at IPP. So this is basically using compressors to store air underground in underground caverns that are man-made in salt rock formations. And then allowing, when we need the generation, they run through turbines, the compressed air through turbines, and then we can then use that generation output. And these units are very efficient. They can run at a very low heat rate output. They can also, they have a large, wide range that we can ramp them up from just 10% of its output up to 100%. It has a lot of range there to help regulate our system, and a lot of the renewables and so forth. Then we have 3 other battery projects that we added in there in the 23, 24, and 25 time frame to basically help us integrate more solar energy at that time period. Our EV charging forecast that we used, so we have, which is the CEC's IEPR, Integrated Energy Policy Report, I believe is the acronym, their forecast here. Our program ramps up very quickly here after about 2020, and we hope to achieve double the number of EVs in our system. Now, we're building the charging infrastructure, we're doing the outreach, we're doing the education, we're providing lots of incentives for home chargers and so forth to ramp up this program. We do need our customers to adopt these EVs. We can only help to drive this, but we can't do anything unless customers adopt EVs. And this also could include electrification, like port electrification or other mass transit electrification. So one of the inputs to our modeling is the load forecast. As you can see here, we're going up at about a 1.1% increase each year beyond 2016. And that would be without energy efficiency. With energy efficiency, our load is actually, our customer load is actually going down slightly. And with electrification, which is more, we're going to have more electric vehicles on our system, more processes, fossil fuel processes that are going to be converted over electricity. And I'll talk about the advantages of that. But once we're expecting more electrification in the future, and so our load forecast will be essentially level going forward, at least in the short term. We don't show this going out to 2030, but we do model it out to 2036, and we do show growth. And I think it's about in the 0.3% growth rate, which is pretty low compared to historically, which was about over 1%. So one of the big changes this year is resource adequacy. I think this is probably one of the most important things that we do is in terms of IRP modeling, is determining the capacity needs for our system to meet our peak demand. And that typically occurs in the summertime during a heat wave. Here you see in 2017 we have 5,000 megawatts here. This is more illustrative here. Example, but this is our customer load profile over 24 hours in 2017 on a summer day. This is what the aggregate load of all the customers' load adds up to, and this is what our generators and renewables have to respond to. Then we have solar. So this is the effect of the load as solar is introduced. You can see that it shifts the net, we call it the net peak load. And so the net peak load is without solar and without wind. These resources are highly variable, and we look at all hours of a 20-year period. We look at every single hour, and we evaluate what that net load would be with solar versus wind. So we have profiles that vary up and down day to day, hour to hour in our modeling, and we've identified hours where that net load, and this is the net load that we have to respond using dispatchable generation, so gas-fired generation, energy storage, and so forth, and I'll show you the breakdown in a minute. So here's the net load. This is what we need to focus on in the future in terms of capacity needs. Just give you an example, in 2032, our load's going to grow. Our peak demand is going to be higher. Remember, this is illustrative, so don't get hung up on the numbers here. But it could be much higher here in 2032. And you can see here the net load here is much higher, but it's occurring in the evening hours, basically when people come home from work and through about 10 o'clock at night, we see this big peak. And so this is what we're concerned with solar and wind going forward. And so one of the big findings this year was that we're finding that this peak hour of this net load And by the way, this is consistent with what the ISO is doing, California ISO and other utilities that are grappling with renewables. We're all seeing the same pattern here. So the peak hour that it used to occur around hour 17 is now occurring in hour 20, 21 in that time frame. And so at night, at that hour, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of solar at that point. Especially in 2017, there might be a fragment, but in 2020, there's really no solar output that late at night. And then the wind may have some output, but we look at a 95% confidence of whether that wind is going to actually be blowing or not. And what we're finding is that wind is highly, highly variable, and even at a 95% confidence level, you get almost zero output from wind, unless that wind is firmed and shaped somehow with hydro and then delivered to our system. Then it can provide a lot of capacity during those hours. So this is one of the issues we're going to be struggling with as we go to 100% RPS, I feel, is dealing with these nighttime hours. The daytime hours are fairly straightforward. There is some challenge there, but the nighttime hours are the big concern. So this is the dependable capacity breakdown here. We have our large hydro, Hoover and Castaic, Palo Verde, our nuclear, and basin thermal here, gas-fired generation. Out of basin thermals, our Apex plant. We have coal going away and being replaced 1,200 megawatts with 600 megawatts here. Here's our existing renewable contribution. A lot of this is firmed and shaped wind, and geothermal makes up most of this capacity contribution. Energy efficiency contributes some, but not that much. Demand response is pretty effective at providing capacity. So that's one of the programs we're really looking at, to supply 500 megawatts of capacity. And then we have storage here. So this is, in this case, it's 178 megawatts of storage. We believe that storage has to really be available over a 4-hour period to be effective. It can't just be 1 hour to replace gas-fired generation. So we need to have it over a significant enough hours to be equivalent. And then we show the capacity shortfall here. So it's nothing to be too alarmed about. There's lots of things we can do going forward. We do this purposely by showing a smaller IPP replacement to see how much we might need to add in terms of energy storage, additional energy storage, or do we need to do more demand-side programs to reduce customers' load in those evening hours, shifting electric vehicle charging to daytime, for instance, which is very strange in utility world, but this is the world we're living in with a large supply of solar. We'll want to have electric vehicles charged in the middle of the day, but not at home at night. Those type of programs that we can use to address the capacity shortfall. With the 65% RPS case, we have the added benefit of we've added some additional geothermal projects in there and some solar as well. And then, but the solar's not contributing much. And then we also have some wind in there as well. We also have a larger storage component, so we have 404 megawatts of storage, that number came up from the LA Sustainability Plan, that target. So we have a capacity shortfall here, and you can see that it's smaller than before. So it did shrink. Here's a renewable energy breakdown, 50% RPS. I don't want to get too much into this, but it's just to show you the breakdown for 50%. So you hit 50% by 2030, and it stays at 50% in the case 5 and case 4 as well. And then in the 65% RPS case, you see us reaching 55% RPS by 2030. That's 5% more than required by SB 350. and then reaching 65% by 2036. This has more geothermal in it and more wind, as you can see down here. Okay, so the results. So we'll go right to it. So early IPP replacement, we found there was a net cost of $70 million. This is over the time frame of 2 years, 2025 to 2027. You can see here the GHG removal cost was, when we take the total cost over that time period of 2 years and divide it by the amount of emission savings that we find in our modeling, we came out to a cost per metric ton of $20. That's very cost effective in our mind. Increasing RPS from 50 to 65% was about $1.2 billion over the period 2025 to 2036, about a 10-year period. Here's the cost. Removal cost, $124. Increasing local solar from the low local solar case to the high local solar case, increasing from 1,200 megawatts by 2036 to 1,800 megawatts. And over 20 years, it was $2.2 billion. Here's the removal cost here. The increased energy storage from 178 megawatts to 404 was found to be $428 million. Increasing transportation electrification from a base EV to high EV, we found was $250 million. This is actually the cost for the next 6 years, and this basically is offset with revenue that we get from the sales, from the electricity sales. So we have the cost of the program, the incentives that we pay out for charging, infrastructure, and so forth, and then it's offset by revenue. So for the first 6 years, we have a cost. After 2023 and beyond, there's actually a benefit to us. We're positive revenue generating at that point. So this is just in the short term. If we get all of the CARB credit that and I'll talk about that a little bit more, we would have a removal cost of $7 per metric ton. So that could be potentially a very cost-effective way of reducing GHG emissions. And then we have a solar-focused program here. That was that one case I talked about, case 8 SF, that we evaluated. And we decided not to show it because it had very, very extreme results, but we found it cost about $512 million and had no GHG benefit. Not going to go into too much detail here. It's just a breakdown of our levelized cost. So we take all of our costs for 20 years, we bring it back to net present value to today's dollars, and that's the cost of each one of these resources here. Our capacity factors, this is a percentage of the potential that those facilities could generate if they operated 24/7, 365 days a year. This is the percentage that they typically come out to be in terms of operation in our modeling. And then this is how much peak load dependable capacity. This is our old peak load, which was from 3 to 5 p.m. here. This is how much each one of these resources contributed during those hours. The net peak load dependable capacity at nighttime here is shown here. You can see the solar had very little contribution in those hours. Bulk power cost comparison. So case 8 with the high local solar was the highest here. This is in millions of dollars here, and this is the 20-year period. Case 8 low local solar was lower here, and then case 4, our base case, is shown here, and case 5 is our recommended case. Here's a levelized cost comparison. So this is taking all of our bulk power costs to today's dollars, and a comparison of those. And you have your handouts. You can take a look at that if you'd like. Over generation here, we found that at the higher levels of RPS, we have more generation. Over generation, this is exceeding our demand. for generation, the amount of energy. So this is energy that we either need to sell off into the marketplace, store it, and use it at a later time, which costs money, or we just curtail it, which we prefer not to do. So here's the over-generation results. Here's our GHG emissions comparison between last year and this year. As you can see, this year we're in green. We have about 13 million metric ton savings, and that was partly due to the Navajo plant going away. And also we're including emissions costs in the dispatch of our units at our ECC. And by doing that, that's depressing the amount of coal output and increasing the amount of gas input, and that's saving almost a year's worth of emissions going forward. We think that's a pretty significant change. RPS, excuse me, other direction. There's a comparison of our cases. 65% cases do show a downward trajectory here. At a certain point, 50% cases start to level off and then start to increase a little bit with electrification, load growth. Carbon intensity of power plant fuels versus gasoline. So this is our resource mix will have a carbon intensity of 1,100 pounds per megawatt hour. That's today. In the future, we'll be at 590 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour output as we get to higher levels of renewables, energy efficiency, and coal. That in 2026 we'll have replaced all of our coal. This is compared to a gasoline or diesel passenger vehicle that produces 2,400 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. So you can see there's a 4-to-1 savings there if you drive an electric vehicle versus a gas vehicle. And we model that savings, which I'll show you in a second. Using electricity to replace fossil fuels in primarily transportation sector, which is 60% of the local emissions. These are primarily NOx emissions and other small criteria pollutants in our local community here. So 60% is transportation. So I think there's a lot of room for electricity to reduce local emissions here, down significantly here. Just for a comparison, our LADWP NOx emissions represent only 0.01% of this total here. So it's a very, very, very small amount of emissions actually come out of our facilities, and that's because we have very advanced emission control systems to remove pollutants out of our stack. So transportation sector accounts for most of that. Here's our emissions before EV savings are included, that 4-to-1 ratio. So the solid line is for case 4. The dashed line is once you include the electric vehicles, the savings from that. If you look at the overall societal-wide emissions impact from both the electricity sector and the electrification of the transportation sector together, you get the dashed line, which is lower. And for each one of the cases, it goes down with the 65% being lower. I won't go into the capacity factor, but this is our in-basin thermal capacity factor over time. It shoots up and down here primarily because of the replacement of IPP. Here's our natural gas usage going forward. You can see we're decreasing with renewables, energy efficiency, and so forth. Once we replace IPP, our in-basin plants will be used more often to replace that coal-fired generation. Overall, there's a benefit in terms of emissions, but our gas consumption does go up. Here's our NOx forecast out of our in-basin plants. It's growing up. Most of this is caused by electrification, so more electric vehicles being charged. So really the overall impact is not shown here, but it's very positive. So this increase shouldn't be looked at as being too negative, because there is an emissions savings on the electric vehicle side. Rate case comparisons here between the 4 cases. And now we want to get to your comments. So last year, the public outreach in 2014, these were some of the issues that we heard from you all. And we basically took all of your comments. We have, my staff here is going to be writing down some of your comments, and we put that all together. We have all of our comments from the advisory committee, all the public process, and we take all of that, distill those into major themes, concerns, and this is what we had from 2014. So here's the 4 cases I'd like to hear you comment on. You can see the differences between the cases highlighted in bold here to give you some sense of which ones you find attractive, what concerns you have about the power system in general, about our programs, our policies, our goals, and so forth. You can see here that here's the cost impact. This is a frame of reference. This is in millions of dollars here. So this is $5.2 billion more than case 4, which is the 50% with the low EV. And then we have our bill impact. This is a bill in 2036. So that's not today, it's dollars. This is what you would pay if you were transported to the future in 2036. So this is a comparison of the bills here. If we were not able to achieve EVs because of the additional revenue that would generate, you would have about a $3.89 increase in each one of these bills here. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor for comment.
Thank you, James. And I just want to, before we get into the comments or question period, I just want to thank my team here, James and his staff of Mighty 4, I call them, and their hard work this year because of all the cases that ran. They ran over 16 cases, plus they actually crashed our IT system for a little bit, and we had a little technical difficulty. Just like tonight, IT fixed it, and I appreciate IT help out on this with the WebEx, and thank you for communications for the people online. If you can they address the questions now? Right. And then, but can they? Okay. So for the folks online on the WebEx, if you can, I appreciate it. So we'll get the question real quick, but I want to give thanks again to my team, and thank you so much, guys.
Okay, so we'll be passing the microphone to you so the people online can hear your comments. Sir?
I got it. Yeah. I see that you only have 16 by 2035, or 16 megawatts in the production of solar. You know, Germany was able to replace the whole grid, 96%, you know, in 3 years. And they refused to use the nuclear after the Japan problem over there. So why would you have a little more aggressive? What I see over there that you're replacing, you put a very little, you know, 1,600 for 2035. That is so little megawatt, you know, from solar. Compared, you still use the gas in a great amount. You know, gas is not clean energy. You know, if you burn 1 kilogram of gas, natural gas, you obtain 2.7 kilograms of carbon dioxide. That's kill the planet. That is the chemistry. So why you don't invest more like the German people did they had to replace about 2 years ago. They had to replace the whole grid, and they have about 30% less solar than us over here. What we have the drought that we had 4 or 5 years that we didn't have any water. It's very close relating with the global warming that we have, even when a lot of people don't want to accept. So if we have this sense, why you don't go to solar like Germany people did over there, and very aggressively. It's 1,600 megawatts by 2035. That's too little compared with the gas that you use. You're still using coal in great amount over there. So please go directly, like Germany people did, It's a development country. They did fast in 2 years. They changed the whole grid. As a matter of fact, the whole grid couldn't resist the amount of energy they were generating. Also, they have panels that they have 40%, 40% capability. We only have a 16%, the one that we use now. Go over there trying to get that input and use those resources. Okay. We barely need the thing.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah, planning out these renewables is a very long and very difficult task. Even at the 50% RPS, our transmission resources are pretty much maxed out. We've got upgrades to our transmission system, but those take about a 10-year planning process, and partly because of environmental concerns and so forth. So that process takes a while, and we're doing some upgrades, unfortunately, it's a lot more difficult, I think, in the U.S. here to get projects built. And
the key graph, I think, is the greenhouse gas emission comparison graph. And if you were to put that up and show how you're and put the percentage down, I think towards the end of the period, you get down to something like, 90% reduction relative to 1990?
Yeah, the AB 32 goal is to reach 80% reduction from 1990 levels by 2050. So that actually ends up being about 3.5 million metric tons, and you can see here, if you include the electrification, we're below that level much earlier. Yeah. We've also reduced 40% by 2017 or 2018 we'll be at 40% below, and that's 13 years ahead of what the state is requiring currently.
So here's your basic problem. Everybody, almost everybody in this room is probably looking at the 65% and going, man, that's not very ambitious. 90% sounds pretty ambitious. That's the number you need to talk up. And it doesn't make sense to the casual observer that given how important it is to get to 0% emissions by 2050 or so to maintain the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees, it doesn't make sense to the casual observer that you're investing in new fossil fuel facilities. It's really hard for us to understand. So it would be really cool if you could have a scenario, if you labeled your scenarios not by RPS, but also by percent GHG reduction versus 1990. And if you included, I know 65% seems like an amazing thing to you guys, but you need to bump it up a little bit, like 70, 75. And you need to have in that scenario a date after which you commit to not having any new fossil fuel generation. So hats off to you guys for trying and following the moving goalposts. But we're all really anxious, and we need a wartime level sort of effort here. Thank you.
Good. On that.
Yes, appreciate your comment. Thank you. Yes, our 100% renewable study will start to give us some clarity on the direction we're going to go to higher levels of renewables and replacing fossil fuel generation. So we're saving that till we get, stakeholders involved, get the research community involved, academia, figuring out how to do this, because it is like the moonshot. It's sending the man to the moon to get 100% RPS.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm speaking on behalf of the people of LA who really do want and need 100% renewables as soon as possible. So really, we need the DWP to step up and to do what needs to be done, to do our part to help stabilize the climate, and to have LA serve as an example for the rest of the world, like Germany, that it can be done and it needs to be done. And business as usual in terms of the energy choices is not an option. We do have technology that helps us to solve the problem. We really need to have solar power on all the rooftops in LA that can handle it. We also need to invest in wind and electric vehicles. So yes, I do want 100% renewable energy as soon as possible, but of the scenarios given, I'll take case 8, the 65% by 2035. I was in the audience the last time after the IRP public comment period when you made the presentation of your new energy pie chart, and really I was horrified to see that the portion that had been coal had pretty much just been moved into natural gas. I really felt betrayed by that. Natural gas is in no way better than any other climate-altering fossil fuel. So we're gonna fight you on every new fossil fuel infrastructure investment that is made, and especially the rebuilding of gas power plants that tie us into decades more of fossil fuel dependence. And LA can really thrive and grow in a clean energy economy, and that's what we need and want. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sure.
Okay, well, I'm reading a editorial from Oil and Gas Journal, and they're predicting that the increased price of electricity and the increased consumption of natural gas will liberate natural gas liquids, and both of those things will work against electric vehicles. Or do you plan to somehow subsidize electric vehicle electricity costs? Because otherwise people are going to be cheaper burning gasoline.
Yeah, we do offer, I believe, about basically, I think it's around 10 cents kilowatt hour, which is pretty heavily subsidized already. So that's our current rate for EVs. So yeah, we think going forward we'll probably have to still have below the probably the baseline rate going forward to encourage that. But we would not want to discourage electric vehicle sales, that's for sure.
And we also have a very aggressive charger rebate program. So if you look on our website, it's very aggressive, more aggressive than any other utility around our neighborhood.
Electric vehicles get about 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. So if electricity costs more than about a dime, you're almost cheaper off burning diesel.
Yeah, I think that the price I've heard from our EV program manager is about equivalent to $1 a gallon at 10 cents. So I think gasoline would have to be below $1 a gallon, which I would think would be pretty tough to do.
Let's go to someone on that side, and then we have an internet question.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this. Actually, thank you for all this great work, and I really appreciate the way you're looking at the integration of electric vehicles as part of increasing renewables. And just in response to the comment that I heard before, I get electricity for my vehicle from LADWP, and it's a phenomenally good deal, and the price is about what you say it is. And when I was driving my Toyota Corolla, I used to pay about $120 to $150 a month in gasoline, and now I'm paying about $30 a month for electricity. And I even get 50% of it totally renewable, which bumps up my rate just slightly. So you're doing a great job on subsidizing the costs of driving electrically, and I thank you for that. My question is, it also relates to the concern about coastal natural gas plants and the amount of money that DWP plans on putting into those because of the once-through cooling provision. And I'm wondering how, because the beautiful thing about what you presented is that you've shown that you're thinking deeply about the interplay between different energy resources and demand response and energy efficiency programs and electric vehicles and all that, how it'll work together to create a new energy picture, a completely new paradigm. And I think that really deserves commendation. I think that's fantastic. My question would like to push that a little bit further. First of all, might there be an intermediate case between what the hell is that? Between case 8 and case 8 LLS, because the difference is in the amount of local solar. It's not a difference in renewables, it's a difference in the amount of local solar. And I think that there's an expense component to that that might make an intermediate case still with a healthy component of in-basin solar, but maybe with a little bit less expense to make it more palatable. And furthermore, see, now you give me a great break on my electricity if I charge my car after 8 o'clock. But now I'm looking at the curve up there, and 8 o'clock is going to be the most expensive time. It's going to be the worst time for me to charge.
Have to change.
Now, I think new electric vehicles will have circuitry in there which lets you program when the vehicle will accept a charge. I could charge it after midnight, or I could charge it during times of peak solar in the middle of the summer, for example, when there's a surplus of solar power that you want to get rid of. Is there some plan? Of course, I might not be home in the middle of the day, so is there some plan that I could get a text message and say, go over to the DWP substation and charge your car now and you'll get a break on the some system like that, so that people
I think,
electric motors are like the wacky few now, but that's going to change, man, because, again, the comment about electric vehicles being more expensive than gasoline, I just don't know where that came from. Electric vehicles are a crazy good deal, and people are going to take advantage of that all over the place, but I think the relationship between us and you is going to be important in making this whole picture work. There's got to be a communication relationship between the vehicle, the owner, the utility, to make the demand response and the absorption of excess energy by electric cars a reality. So I just wondered if, I'm sorry, it's a long-winded question, but if you could comment on all of that.
I appreciate all those comments. So to address the intermediate case, we have looked at different combinations. I think that what was important here is we kind of outlined the bookends, and so we could consider different combinations of net metered and feed-in tariff in between there to try to find the most economic and most GHG impactful benefit. So we have looked at that, and we'll continue looking at that next year in much greater detail. This year is more about getting a frame of reference, and then we'll go into more detail. Addressing the electric vehicles, yes, we'll absolutely have to encourage charging more during the middle of the day when we have lots of solar, lots of renewables on our system. And discourage use during the, when you come home from work, and have timers on the vehicles and be able to charge late at night in the early morning hours if you can't charge during the day. And we are looking at that being a part of our demand response program. It's pretty complex to have all the infrastructure in place, the IT infrastructure to send out those demand response signals, but it's something we're definitely looking at in the future.
Hi. We have a couple questions online. Two are related, so I'll read them both. One person is asking, why keep using nuclear when it is not even that large a percent of the mix? The other question is, why use nuke at all? Most dangerous stuff in the universe, no place to safely store used cores and fuel rods.
Well, yeah, nuclear is 10% of our mix. We share that plant with a whole lot of other utilities. I think the facility is about 3,600 megawatts. We have about 10% of that ownership in that plant, participation. It's in Arizona. It's one of the latest plants built. It's one of the newest plants in the entire country, and it has a very strong safety record. The renewal of the license is in 2045 for the first facility, and I think it's 45, 46, 47. So at that time, we're in long-term contracts that we can't easily get out of. That's where we stand at the moment.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's very informing. I'm a little bit disappointed to only see 65% as your highest goal, especially since the City Council is kind of asking for 100%. I think as a customer of LADWP, I would like to see 100% as well. There seems to be some kind of misconception about achieving 100% being some kind of moonshot, as you just said it before. The technology is available today to do that. We were talking about doing a lot of academic research and all that kind of stuff, which is great, but I don't think it's necessary to transition to 100% renewables today. You have right next to us at Alamitos in Long Beach, they're building a 300 megawatt battery storage facility that will be online by, I think it's 2021 or 29. 300 megawatts. I mean, that kind of more or less fills up most of the energy storage that you're looking at for the whole duration in your highest program. So I think that could be more aggressive in your program, definitely to do a lot more. Something that I didn't see at all in your program is the use of hydrogen. It's a common technology out there that's being used. You can retrofit your existing gas turbine infrastructure to run on hydrogen. You have the U.S. Navy right now that is retrofitting their naval ships that run on diesel to run on hydrogen harvested from seawater. We're a coastal city. We have access to ocean water. I'm not sure why that is not even considered. I mean, that is technology that exists today. We don't need to research it. Looking at solar by itself, I mean, there's really no reason why that shouldn't completely be done a lot more. LA has enough unshaded rooftop solar to power the entire state. The key is to figure out how to store it. I think that's where we have to go. And to see that storage in your whole plan is so small, I think that really needs to be aggressively increased. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, these are a lot of the areas that you pointed out. The hydrogen, all of those will be, I'm sure, part of that 100% renewable study going forward. I know that's one of the things that DOE is looking at, H2 at scale program. So looking at hydrogen, but yeah, there's a lot of technology out there, but it needs to be improved, and the economics of it need to be improved as well. So going forward, so it requires huge investments of money, and we want to make sure we do it right in the future, and not go down a path that's expensive and not productive.
I really appreciate all of the efforts to try and reach the highest possible percent of renewable energy. However, one of the things that I'm concerned about is the more you reach in percentage, the higher the costs dramatically are going to be. Because you're not just talking about shifting daytime to nighttime, you're now talking about shifting summer to winter. And if you look at our total problem, our total opportunity in California, given the most recent climate legislation, which is really dramatic, the only way to achieve the most recent California goal for all of us as a society in greenhouse gas emissions, if you sit back and look at it, is with electrification of transportation. And I think that we need to, instead of just target one industry like power and say we want, 65 and 75 and 85 and 100, there may be a good case in this intermediate term for burning fossil fuel to eliminate petroleum emissions from cars. Because if we're going to eliminate the total greenhouse gas emissions, I don't see any way from doing it other than electrifying cars. You can't, if you put all this money into going to 100% or however close you can get to it generation, the cost will go up so much that it will inhibit the electrification of transportation. So I'm only arguing not against this effort to try and go as far as we can go, but looking at the whole problem, including transportation, electrification, and costs.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really a multi-sector issue, and not just the electricity sector can solve the issue. Even if the electricity sector was 100% clean, we would get nowhere near 80% below 2050 levels. So it really requires transportation sector, commercial sector, industrial sectors, all the sectors of the economy. The natural gas supply needs to be greened, and so forth. So we've been looking, been involved in studies on a statewide level, looking at how do we get to the 80% below, and it's really eye-opening. You start to look at how much has to be done, not just in the electric sector, which we're just a small part of, but every sector across the board.
So I think DWP needs to really look at approaching this on a scientific approach, because 65% really is saying to the stakeholders, you're selling us false hope, when really we want 100%. 65 gets us only halfway there, but at a cost that becomes somewhat not too transparent. So, on a scientific approach, you guys really need to look at developing more partnerships, because like the gentleman said, it's out there already. But you keep saying that it doesn't make sense to convert something because of money. Money shouldn't be an issue when it's the customers that's paying. If we're paying the bill, why is it a question? Because I just spoke to my mom today in Watts. She's got a $1,000 electric bill. So what do I tell her? Going forward, we've been trying to get solar power down there for the longest. It's like, all I hear is, well, the money isn't trickling down from the state level, and the state is saying, well, no, we're sending the money to them. So where do we go from here? We agreed to this rate increase, but, we don't want to be hoodwinked. We don't want to be hit over the head, bullwinkled into believing into a system that's promising false hope. We really want hope, not false hope.
Yeah, our rate increases are about 4 to 5% in this latest rate case. And so, if you really want to accelerate to 100% renewable, you'd have to really increase that substantially. And I'm not sure that all of our customers would feel that it was
But the cost should be shared across the whole city of Los Angeles, like you said, industrial, everything. And like the man said, if we don't transform the vehicle population, it won't even matter what we go to, right? Because it's still going to be an issue if we can live through it to see it.
Yeah, we have a lot of low-income customers, so we have to be cognizant of them and their rates.
Everybody is low income. This is Los Angeles.
We have a lot.
Just not down in Watts, not in, South LA, but if you look at it across the board, I mean, if you keep paying those high DWP bills, you will become low income.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question from our webcast. Is there any scenario that includes educating the public so that we can reduce demand through conservation? For example, charts that show how much taxpayers save in both residential costs but also in reduced taxes from reduced supply required.
Well, we have a very aggressive energy efficiency program, and as you see on the table outside, we have brochures there of programs that you can avail yourself of, rebate programs. We have direct install programs for our customers. So we have very aggressive energy efficiency goals that are much higher than most of the other utilities. We're trying to achieve 15%, which is about 1% a year. And that's costing upwards of about $150 million a year of investment for that. So that would be the best way for customers to get involved in energy conservation, is to take advantage of those programs. But that's too bad.
A lot of the concerns that I've heard about the 100% energy, have been directed to the topic of a study that's being performed. But I haven't heard anything on potential deadlines or dates for when that study could come to fruition, for when we could get information out of that. Do you know anything about when that study would be completed or when we would get usable information out of it? And also, in the plans, there's a section of energy called generic power or generic renewable power. Could you clarify what exactly that means, what power sources those are?
So generic power, I'll first address that one. So generic power is generally used to true up when we have shortfalls in meeting our targets because of the build-out schedules being delayed for whatever reason, construction delays. If we have a shortfall in a particular year, we can go out there and purchase renewables, renewable energy credits. We're allowed a certain amount of percentage of renewable energy credits, and we go out there to basically balance out and true up our numbers. But it's a fairly small percentage. Next year, after this year, once we have these solar projects online, we'll be above the targets. So we don't expect a lot of generic purchases to begin with. In the longer term, the generic purchases that we show, that's kind of we leave that category as sort of open to new technologies, potentially like, tidal energy technologies or some other technologies out there. It could always be filled with solar or wind or geothermal or biogas, but we kind of leave that as an open space, recognizing that there'll be new technologies developed in the future.
I think my problem with all of this is that there doesn't seem to be any urgency. And the scientists are all coming out saying that we've reached the point of no return. And in 20 years, probably Los Angeles is going to have a markedly less population because there's no water here. I mean, if our drought continues, the trees are already dying. And if there's not more water coming into LA, chances are all of your charts are going to not be worth anything because the population, how can anyone we won't be able to live here. There won't be any water in 20 years. I don't know. It seems like somebody else said we need to be at war with this. And it's like, well, maybe in 20, 30 years, but I mean, is that right? I mean, isn't that what the scientists are saying now, that we've already reached a point of no return?
Okay, before we address that question, I would like to answer the gentleman's question. It's just about the deadline. When is this 100% clean energy study is going to be over? This is a question that we're asking ourselves on a regular basis. Our intent is to finish this study as soon as possible in a reasonable fashion. We have no intent or plan to do an extended study that would take years. Would like to set a deadline as we move forward and see some, once the research partnerships, what the results are, what's feasible to do, and we may not wait until the last point. We'll start working on some of the positive findings that we find up front, and that's what the stakeholder engagement process is for, to make sure that we communicate our results, what's feasible. Once we find a result that we can apply, we'll integrate it into the future IRP process, the Integrated Resource Plan, so that it becomes a commitment. It's part of our ongoing project. So our intent is to come up with the investment levels necessary for each scenario, and as soon as possible. So that I can commit to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. So to address your concern, I think that's why the City Council adopted this 100% renewable goal, and started this whole process as they recognized that this climate change is a serious issue, and so that process is going on. It just started just months ago. Looking out in the future, that's part of the stakeholder process, is to express your concerns in the future and how aggressive or we should be as far as replacing infrastructure. Just keep in mind that it's very difficult, it's very time-consuming, it's very laborious, it's very challenging. It's not like you just do it overnight. There's lots of steps that have to take place in order to get to higher levels of renewables. Just to get to 65% is incredibly challenging. If you look at all the transmission constraints and the integration issues and keeping a reliable supply, irregardless of the cost, it would still be very challenging.
Hello, sir, and I'm a high school student, and I really want to say the number is actually not as I expecting, and I was not actually wanted maybe 100%. Maybe I was thinking maybe 80%, and that actually is actually satisfied with that number. But like, borrow a word from Martin Luther King Jr. If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. I mean, that is a significant amount of number, but like, if you cannot, then why don't you use the 20% left or the 35% left into something cleaner instead of fossil fuel making endless carbon dioxide? Why don't just use something cleaner like nuclear power plants? The uranium-365 are still rich in United States, and seriously, a nuclear bomb, the kind of how much nuclear bomb can need is enough for a whole nuclear power plant. I mean, why don't just use nuclear power plant to satisfy the 20% or 35%?
And If you don't mind, stay afterwards. I'd like to talk to you because if you're 18 years old, I want to hire you when you graduate from college. Again, right now it's about 8 o'clock. I'll address your question a little. Right now it's about 8 o'clock, and you're welcome to stay. But I just want to let you know that if you have any more questions or discussion topics, we'll be here around. We'll discuss it with you. But it is 8 o'clock, so you're not obligated to stay here. The presentation has officially ended, and people on the web, we're going to continue to be online with them. So don't worry. We won't shut the internet on you. There's no outage of internet. So, but yes, no, we are looking at all the resources. Again, that's why we have this parallel path of this 100% study that is in motion that the council passed and directed us to do so. So as we do this study, and like Simon mentioned earlier, we're not going to take our time. We're diligently forming the team up. We have all the SME subject matter experts within in-house. We're looking at outside of a department, looking at research partnership with all the very high-tech entities and also the research partners like UCL, USC that we already work with. We're going to work with them all. And we're not going to, again, we're going to do this as soon as possible so we can get some results that are feasible and also make sure it's cost-effective so that we can put into the integrated resource plan. As the IRP is a document that we need to keep this integrity of the document, but on the other hand, we have this 100% research partner and the documentation that will come out with the stakeholder outreach and so forth. We will be publishing those. Everything will be transparent. So just be understanding that the IRP or Integrated Resource Plan is going to be a regulated document by the state. So just let everybody know that. Okay.
So I just want to comment if anybody wants to leave. And we'll stay here. I'd be happy to answer more questions. I know we got a late start. I apologize for that. All these technical difficulties, and I probably yammered on for too long. So, but I tend to do that. The email address is powerirp@ladwp.com. Please send us in your comments. We are collecting all of those. And also, if you want to learn more about the IRP, you can go to our website here, and that's on the last page of the presentation here. So I just wanted to mention that. We'd like to have your comments by November 17th. The bulk of them. We'd like to have you fill out the survey card here and leave it with us at the desk in front. We'll be collecting these, so if you could please fill these out before you leave, we'd really appreciate that. I guess with that, we'll continue to accept comments beyond the November 17th, but we'd like the bulk of them, but we can't guarantee your comments will get in after that point, but we'll try to do what we can if it takes you a little bit longer. So.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the presentation and for all the work I know went into developing these cases and for simplifying the cases for the public. Thank you. I wanted to make a comment about the costs and what you have here in the summary of resource assumptions, and you're showing that what jumped out to me was the new simple cycle gas costs $400 to $500 per megawatt hour, and I know that some of the repowering that you're doing on the coastal power plants is reinvesting in this type of single cycle gas. And so what would be more honest in an account when we're looking at renewable portfolio standards and how much renewables cost, how much combined simple cycle and storage, you have that laid out here, but what are the investments we're currently making in repowering this gas infrastructure? I know that total it was priced out at $1.6 billion. So how does that weigh into our decisions when I know that these plants are used at less than 10% capacity or less, so they're often used for peak usage? Shouldn't that money be reinvested into local storage, for example? And then also when we're looking to the future of eliminating the IPP for coal but rebuilding a smaller gas power plant, to me as a ratepayer, that's money down the drain. That's stranded assets immediately because of our very ambitious statewide goals and our ambitious goals here in LA. So I would love to see an accounting of that. And not only when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions reductions, we don't even consider the full life cycle of emissions from gas. And we know that in order for gas to reasonably replace coal in terms of climate benefits, it has to leak at less than 1%. But in the LA Basin, it leaks 2.6 to 6% just from the pipelines alone. So by transitioning to gas, we're actually doing more harm to the climate. So all of these things need to be more honestly accounted for in the IRP.
Yeah, that's one of our biggest concerns is, making sure we make the right decisions of whether it's simple cycle units or combined cycle units. At this point, I think we, at today's 50% RPS levels, we have pretty good confidence that we have enough flexibility in our generation fleet, so we don't need to build any more simple cycle units. But if we go to much higher levels of RPS, we may have to consider some more. The cost figures that you saw in that assumptions isn't really a good indicator. One of the advantages, it may cost you a lot to run it when you run it, but one of the advantages is not running it. And so if you can turn a unit off and not be consuming gas and only use it when you need it, that has a cost that is a little bit more difficult to quantify. But in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, that might be a better choice. So that's one of the things that we always are looking at, is between getting a unit that runs more often versus it's cheaper versus a unit that doesn't run, and then comparing that to energy storage resources as well. So we're doing a lot of those trade-offs all the time and trying to make their decisions, and believe me, they don't happen very quickly. So making those choices of resources is a very long process.
Hi, good evening. My name's Tim. I'd like to echo some of the comments that Alex just made about costs, but the charts show that, of course, there's in 2025, 2026, there's a dramatic increase projected for the use of natural gas, and then at the same time you have that increasing peak of demand sort of at the end of the day, which it looks like when you put them together, it's mostly going to be provided by those natural gas resources that are going to be sort of increasing utilization. But the costs for storage, I mean, they look like they're using near-term costs, or like present-day costs, as opposed to projected future costs. And most analysts say that storage actually is sort of on the curve where solar was, and the costs are starting to actually decrease very dramatically on like a logarithmic decay. And the question is sort of like, what's the forecast that you guys are giving to storage, and how do you think the rulemaking changes that are happening, like for example with the ISO, that allows storage to compete more readily against things like gas for providing those peak services, should bring down the overall cost? How's that figured into the IRP models here?
So regarding the costs, we did do a sensitivity analysis. We looked at an expected cost curve going forward. I can't remember the sources that we used. Jay might be able to remember, but we did look at a low forecast, which was maybe a fifth of what it is today of the cost. And then we looked at a little bit higher forecast. So we wanted to see what the range of cost impact would be from different trajectories for the costs. We do think that the cost will come down quite a bit. I think the significant cost savings will probably be in the 2030 range, or maybe hopefully sooner. That's when I think that the big energy storage will start to really take off. And up until that point, the costs, we have seen some cost declines in the near term. So we are pretty optimistic that the costs are coming down in the future. So we'll be continually monitoring that cost in future IRPs, and if we see that the cost is really declining further, we can analyze that and put in higher levels of energy storage. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it's good to always be flexible in how much energy storage you actually put on your system, instead of just going to a prescriptive approach of just saying, do 500 megawatts of energy storage. It's good to determine what your need is from your power supply, because goal is to reduce overgeneration and to supply regulating reserves on our system so that we can take off gas-fired generators offline, because that has a huge impact on greenhouse gas savings. So some of the near-term smaller battery installations will actually have the biggest impact, even though they're small. The larger energy storage are saying hundreds and hundreds of megawatts of batteries. Those will be good for what we call arbitrage, bringing power from the middle of the day when we're over-generating and bring it to the evening and doing that. But the frequency of how much it charges and discharges affects the price. And so, yeah, we're looking at that. This past year, we've learned a lot. We've been talking to battery manufacturers. We've been doing a detailed analysis and our modeling for the first time on battery energy storage. We always did pumped hydro, but now we're starting to model battery energy storage. So, yeah, I think it's a real positive thing in the future.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I'm a high school student as well. I wanted to ask a question about, I keep hearing you say, yeah, we're going to get the results as soon as possible, ASAP, you know? But it's like, all I keep hearing is, I'm going to do these small steps in order to get this perfect thing, in order to invest money in something that's going to make, like, overall a big effect. But what about, why don't you take smaller steps in order to get that perfection that you're trying to seek? Why don't you invest money in something small in order that will change, or will help change over time what we're trying to achieve? Like, we want to achieve 100% renewable energy, but what you're trying to achieve is 65. And it's like, it's unfair to us, because I understand in your generation it's not as important, you know. Some of you may not live up till 2036. You know, our generation is going to be affected the most. You know, we haven't addressed climate change.
I'm 25, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But climate change first was seen in the 1800s to the 1850s or 1870s, and it wasn't addressed until the 1990s. So climate change has affected us for a really long time, and we have not done anything until now. And you're saying, oh, wait, no, let's wait a few more until we get that perfection of, oh, yeah, we're going to achieve 65% renewable. Why not 100? We've been waiting for so long. Why wait any longer? You know, I understand you don't see the urgency in this, but I do. So, I mean, it's going to affect my generation, not yours, and I get that. But it's like,
So I agree. I mean, I think all of us, you know, I have children. I'd like to see them live in a world without, you know, higher sea levels and climate change and all that. So I think it's a concern that we all share for the most part. And so thank you for your comment.
Yeah. And I come from the community of Wilmington, where the fossil fuel for transportation is mostly produced a third of California's. So the community of Wilmington in that area of West Long Beach suffer from the impact from the fossil fuel created for transportation. And now you want to add another power plant there. I wonder what you're going to do if we oppose it, because we will. So you're going to have to find another source, because we're not going to allow it, another power plant in Wilmington on top of what we already have. And I do think that, you know, each time that you have figured out, as she was saying, you started so late, you know, how to achieve 100%, and maybe if you don't achieve it, come down to less. But I don't see why we invest in money in infrastructure that's going to become obsolete. And, that's money down the drain. And so some communities are paying in their health to produce the fossil fuels. And also, they are like the third world countries that had nothing to do with having created the climate change, but they are suffering it. That's the community of Wilmington. They cannot even afford air conditioner in peak hot heat. Yet, we have to put up with the flares every time the refinery had to shut down because the utility, got exhausted because of everybody using the ACs. So that's the community that is paying the price for everybody using ACs and they cannot afford it, and also for creating all the fossil fuels. That community can no longer wait. I think we should be shooting for 100% renewables now and invest the money for infrastructure in figuring out how to get there.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Graciela. I'm with the Sierra Club. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that everyone, at least that I've seen here today and other people that I spoke to at the DWP, has said such positive things about the study and the hope that we can get there, and that you're interested in finding out how to do it and working with the public and hearing our comments. But I really am, and I'm also really impressed that you're even in one of your scenarios, you have getting to the RPS state standard 5 years early. That's a big deal, and I really appreciate that. But I really have a hard time understanding how we can continue to invest in rebuilding fossil fuel infrastructure, considering everything that the city has been through. And, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And I understand, the fluctuation in the technology, and that even just hearing you say that you're just starting to learn about battery technology makes me a little, I just have a hard time believing that it's just starting now. But I also feel like there's so much potential because it is such a large utility that, if there is an investment in the battery technology, that it would accelerate the development of it, that the price would come down, that there would be more businesses trying to get that DWP business. And there are local businesses that are, could also be contributing to our local economy. And so I really hope that is really high on the priority list of really looking at the new technology and figuring out how we can accelerate that new technology because we have the ability to really affect the market at a large scale. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much.
Yeah, the 178 megawatts was, I think, adopted 2014. And we hopefully, I think by the end of this year or next year, we'll have the 50 megawatts. That's a pretty big battery. That's a big battery. So we will be making investments in battery technology, and I think that battery will some of those early introductions of batteries will have the biggest impact on GHG emissions, even though the cost is a little bit higher. But in terms of our modeling, it's been difficult finding models in the marketplace that really can model batteries effectively. And so that's been a challenge. This modeling software is very complex. And so we're looking to improve that process and more and more.
I just want to say before we wrap up that we have 2 more meetings. Next week we have meetings November 2nd in Wilmington at the Wilmington Senior Center and November 3rd in Pacoima. So if you have more questions and you live in those areas, please attend those meetings next week. For which one? Oh, both. There are at least a couple hundred. I think maybe up to 2. No, this is our only online one. We don't have the capability of doing it at those locations.
I'm sorry?
And if anybody who's asked a question online and hasn't seen an answer, they will be forwarded to our team, and we will be getting back to you tomorrow. And also, this PowerPoint will be posted online tomorrow. And you think of anything else? Oh. And also, if you have other comments, again, powerirp@ladwp.com.
Right.
And this webinar is going to be posted online probably Friday.
So on the website, it's www.ladwp.com/powerirp. So you'll find the information there. Okay, we're going to post it on that website, and the meeting next week for November 2nd and 3rd will be posted on there. So if you can go to that website, again, that's for people who's listening on the webcast, is www.ladwp.com/powerirp.
Also, if you know people who are coming next week, please encourage them to register online. They can go to that website and register. That gives us a good idea of how many people are coming, so we know, to be prepared. Thank you. Yeah, and I emailed them today, and we will again next week.
Again, I want to stress that, like our Executive Director, Mike Webster, mentioned earlier, this is very important for the City of Los Angeles, and it's very important for Department of Water and Power to have this process that we started back in early 2000s for everybody to look at it. We're way ahead of the state. A lot of the POUs and some of the IOUs, actually, we started after we have, and we gone through this public outreach process many, many years, and we continue to appreciate your attendance and your comments, and truly appreciate your questions. And I can see a lot of concerns. I do see a lot of, I hear a lot of the urgency to get technology going, and we are. Believe me, since 2014, we've been looking at not just the technology feasibility, but also the costs. What are the cost implications? We do expect the energy storage prices, especially the battery, to come down easily 50% in about 4 to 6 years, and then another 2 years, potentially another 50%. So as the battery prices come down, I just want to make sure all of you and everybody listening understand that we still need to look at the feasibility. Like James mentioned earlier, the battery actually takes energy in. The energy had to come from somewhere, and it discharges whenever it's necessary and has to charge it again. So it's kind of like you got to feel it, constantly feel it and discharge. And while that's doing that, something else has got to give, right? So battery's not a generator. Battery's a storage. So there's a big difference in what that can do. And whereas for example, a hydro unit will be constantly be feeding with water and be generating electricity as long as there is water to feed it. So there's a big difference between energy storage. So strategically, geographically, and also technically, how do we put in our system? That's what we're studying. It's not just putting batteries everywhere. It's really looking at the neighborhood, looking at geographic, because we're very geographically diverse. For example, if we need to put enough solar panel battery in the downtown Los Angeles, we need so many thousands of acres of solar and football fields, multiple football fields of battery storage at this point, okay, in order for us to just serve downtown Los Angeles. All right, so again, we got to look at geographic and technical, how does that going to penetrate into our grid from the distribution side and also from people's homes, because as people are getting more engaged and they want their energy storage at their own home and serve their own electric vehicles, we'll have to all take account for that. So that's why this whole IAP process is going to be fed by this 100% clean energy study that Mr. Simon Zudu mentioned earlier, that research process and that research is going to feed into it, and then we can decide whether or not that, again, fossil fuel plants are necessary from that research. So again, the IRP process, we're keeping it as is, as far as a high integrity, as far as how we're going to submit it to the state as a document that we need to live by. Okay, so again, we'll definitely increase our effort and also start an increased effort for the 100% study. Again, there's 2 more meetings, and thank you all for coming again tonight to the downtown LA, and have a safe drive home. Good night.